Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant and looked at the empty screen that should have been full of signals from human colonies. For 3 long weeks now, every single human world beyond the outer rim had gone completely silent. No calls for help and no regular daily reports and no friendly messages from home. Just nothing at all where 27 busy colonies used to talk to Earth every single day. Lisa Webb worked at the communications desk and her hands moved quickly over the controls as she tried again and again to reach someone out there. She looked up at Jake with worry clear on her face and shook her head slowly. Still nothing from New Austin, sir, and that makes every single outer colony completely dark. Not one signal from any of them. Jake felt his stomach twist with a cold fear that he tried not to show to his crew. These were not small settlements or research posts, but real colonies with millions of people living normal lives. Families and children and workers and farmers and teachers, all just gone quiet at the same time. Something very bad was happening out there, and nobody seemed to care except humans. The Galactic Council had been worse than useless when Jake and other human captains had asked for help. Ambassador Crix from the Zenthari had made it very clear that the Council thought humans expanded too fast and too far. Maybe this silence was just what happened when a young species tried to grab too much space too quickly. The other alien races had nodded and agreed, and Jake could see they were almost happy about it. Dr. Amy Rodriguez walked over from her science station carrying a data pad filled with numbers and charts. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met, and if anyone could figure out what was happening, it would be her. Captain, I have been looking at when each colony went silent, and it was not random at all. They stopped talking in a very specific order, starting from the farthest edge and moving step by step toward Earth. Something is out there working its way through our colonies one by one. Jake felt his hands make fists without thinking about it. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 200 years since first contact with alien races. Every other species had been traveling between stars for thousands and thousands of years. They had better ships and better weapons and better technology, and they controlled the best parts of space. Humans were allowed to exist but never really welcomed as equals. Now, with human colonies disappearing, the other races seemed almost relieved that the annoying newcomers might be going away. Plot a course for New Austin, Jake ordered his crew. If something is picking off our people one by one, then we are going to find out what it is and stop it. Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez looked up from his navigation station with concern on his face. Sir, the Council told all human ships to stay away from the outer rim. They said they would handle this through proper channels and official procedures. Jake let out a bitter laugh that had no humor in it at all. Tony, when has the Council ever handled anything that actually helped humanity? They talk and debate and form committees while our people disappear. We are on our own, just like we have always been since we first reached for the stars. He turned to face his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt burning in his chest. Prep the ship for hyperspace jump. If nobody else will look for our missing people, then we will do it ourselves. Amy Rodriguez was still studying her data, and she looked up with something like fear mixed with excitement. Jake, there is something else. The energy readings I am getting from the outer rim are unlike anything in our databases. The quantum signatures are completely alien, but there is something about them that feels almost familiar. Like I have seen these patterns before, but not quite the same. Lisa Webb had been listening to radio signals from across the galaxy, and she suddenly went very pale. Captain, I am picking up some chatter from Zenthari patrol ships near the border. They are reporting strange energy readings too, but they are not investigating. They are pulling back and increasing their defensive positions. Jake felt his jaw get tight with anger. So the aliens know something is out there, but they are just going to let it happen to human colonies. They probably think whatever is attacking us will stop once all the humans are gone. Katie Barnes, the chief security officer, had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. Sir, if we are going out there alone, we should be ready for anything. I recommend we go to full combat readiness and prepare for the worst. Jake nodded and gave the orders that would send them into the unknown. All hands battle stations, charge weapons and raise shields. We are going to find out what happened to our people, and we are going to bring them home. The Valiant jumped into hyperspace and left the safety of human-controlled space behind. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the stars stretch into lines of light as they raced toward New Austin at faster than light speed. He did not know what they would find there, but he knew that humans would never stop looking for their own people no matter what the cost. Dr. Rodriguez continued working at her station, and suddenly she looked up with alarm. Jake, I am detecting massive energy distortions in the New Austin system. Whatever is out there, it is big and it is powerful and it is still there. The crew of the Valiant prepared themselves for whatever they might find, but none of them could imagine the horror that was waiting for them in the silent system that used to be home to 2 million human beings. They were about to discover that their greatest enemy was one that knew everything about humanity and could use that knowledge against them in ways they never expected. As the ship dropped out of hyperspace, Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. The New Austin system was there, but it was wrong in every way that mattered. The planets were still in orbit and the cities were still standing, but there was no life anywhere. No radio signals and no ship traffic and no signs that anyone had ever lived there at all. Something had taken every single human being in the system and left everything else untouched. Jake knew that whatever did this was still out there and it was coming for the rest of humanity. The only question was whether the crew of the Valiant could figure out how to stop it before it was too late for everyone. The New Austin system looked like a tomb floating in space. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant and stared at the sensor readings that made no sense at all. 3 planets that should have been full of busy human cities showed signs of life everywhere except for the life itself. Buildings stood perfect and untouched. Vehicles sat in streets as if their drivers had simply vanished mid-journey. But not a single human heartbeat could be detected anywhere. Katie Barnes led the security team down to the surface of New Austin Prime, and her reports came back filled with confusion and growing fear. Captain, there are no signs of any fight or struggle down here. Coffee cups still sit warm on tables. Children's toys are scattered in playgrounds. Cars are still running with their doors open, but every single person is just gone. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked frantically at her science station, trying to make sense of readings that seemed impossible. The atmospheric composition was normal, and there were no signs of disease or poison or radiation. Whatever had taken 2 million people had done it without leaving a trace of how or why or where they went. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. This was not a natural disaster or an accident. Something had deliberately removed every human being from an entire star system without damaging anything else. Something with technology far beyond what humans or any known alien race possessed. The ship sensors suddenly screamed an alert that made everyone on the bridge jump. Lisa Webb looked at her communications display with wide eyes and her voice shook when she spoke. Captain, we have a massive contact dropping out of hyperspace. It is 3 times the size of our ship and its design does not match anything in our databases. Jake watched the main screen as something appeared that looked like it was made from pure darkness. The ship seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its shape hurt to look at directly. There were no visible weapons or engines, but Jake could feel the power radiating from it like heat from a fire. Before anyone could react, the alien ship sent a transmission directly to the Valiant. Lisa worked her controls with shaking hands and looked up at Jake with confusion and terror. Sir, they are transmitting in perfect English with no translation delay. The signal is coming through clear and strong. The main screen flickered and showed something that made Jake's stomach turn cold with horror. The creature that appeared looked almost human but wrong in every single detail. Its proportions were slightly off and its movements too smooth, and its eyes held knowledge that no human should possess. Greetings, humans of Earth, the thing said, and its voice was exactly like Jake's own voice, speaking his own words. I am what your species would call a mimic. My people have studied your kind very carefully through those we have absorbed from your colonies. We find your biological and mental patterns quite useful for our purposes. Amy Rodriguez grabbed Jake's arm and whispered urgently in his ear. Captain, the quantum signatures I detected earlier make sense now. These creatures are not just copying our appearance. They are copying our neural patterns and our memories and everything that makes us human. That is why the readings seemed familiar. The mimic on the screen continued speaking with that horrible familiar voice. Your outer colonies provided excellent subjects for our research. We have learned much about human creativity and determination, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. These traits will serve us well as we expand throughout this galaxy, using the forms and knowledge of the species we replace. Jake stepped forward and tried to keep his voice steady despite the fear and rage building inside him. What did you do with our people? Where are the colonists from New Austin and all the other worlds? The creature smiled with Jake's own smile, and the effect was more terrifying than any alien monster could have been. They became part of us in a way. Their knowledge and their memories and their innovations are all preserved and improved within our collective consciousness. We are the perfect fusion of biological adaptation and technological superiority. Soon we will replace all the inferior species in this galaxy, starting with the remainder of humanity. Jake realized with growing horror that these mimics had not just killed human colonists, they had absorbed them completely and stolen everything that made them human. Every memory and every skill and every piece of knowledge that 2 million people had possessed was now being used by an alien intelligence that wanted to destroy humanity. The mimic ship weapons began to power up, and Jake could see energy building along its dark hull. We thank you for coming here, humans. Your ship will provide us with additional tactical lore and technical knowledge. Your crew will help us understand human military procedures and ship operations. Soon we will know everything we need to replace your entire species. All hands battle stations, Jake shouted as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The crew of the Valiant had faced pirates and hostile aliens before, but never anything like this. They were about to fight an enemy that knew everything humans knew and could use that knowledge against them. The first energy blast from the mimic ship struck the Valiant shields and nearly knocked everyone on the bridge off their feet. Tony Martinez called out damage reports as more hits followed. Sir, their weapons are more advanced than anything we have seen. They are using targeting patterns that match our own defensive procedures perfectly. Amy Rodriguez was working desperately at her console, and suddenly she looked up with something that might have been hope. Jake, they copied our knowledge and our memories and our tactical procedures, but they are still aliens trying to be human. They do not understand the one thing that actually makes us human. Jake ducked as another blast shook the ship and sparks flew from damaged systems. Amy, I need you to explain that very quickly because we are about to be destroyed by our own stolen knowledge. The mimics are using perfect human tactics and perfect human logic, but humans are not perfect. We make mistakes and we act irrationally, and we do things that make no logical sense but somehow work anyway. They are being too human. They are using the idealized version of humanity from our technical manuals instead of the messy, chaotic reality. Jake suddenly understood what Amy was trying to tell him. The mimics had absorbed human knowledge, but they were still alien minds trying to process that information. They could copy human tactics, but they could not copy the human tendency to throw logic out the window when survival was at stake. Lisa, open an emergency channel to all Earth frequencies, Jake ordered as another blast nearly breached their shields. Tell every human ship and station that we have discovered alien infiltrators who can perfectly copy human appearance and knowledge. Tell them we need immediate backup to test our new anti-infiltration protocols. Amy looked confused as she continued. Working. Jake, what anti-infiltration protocols? We do not have any special procedures for this situation. That is exactly the point, Jake replied with a grim smile. I am about to make the mimics think we have secret weapons and procedures that we actually do not possess. Sometimes the best way to fight an enemy who knows everything is to convince them there are things they do not know. The battle was about to take a turn that no logical tactical manual would ever recommend. The battle between the Valiant and the mimic ship was brutal, and one-sided from the very beginning. The alien vessel weapons were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built, and their tactics were flawlessly executed, using the stolen knowledge of human military commanders. Within minutes, the Valiant shields were failing and hull breaches began appearing across multiple decks. Tony Martinez called out damage reports as explosions rocked the ship. We cannot win this fight, sir. Their weapons know exactly how to penetrate our defenses, and their targeting systems are using our own tactical databases against us. It is like fighting ourselves, but with better technology. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked frantically at her science station, while sparks flew from damaged control panels around her. Her mind raced as she tried to find some weakness in an enemy that seemed to know everything about human ships and human tactics. The answer came to her suddenly, and she looked up at Jake with excitement mixed with desperation. Jake, they copied our knowledge and our memories and our military procedures, but they are still aliens trying to understand what makes us human. They know what we know, but they do not know how we think when everything goes wrong. Jake dodged falling debris as another energy blast nearly tore through the bridge. Amy, I need you to explain that in terms I can use to keep us alive, because we have about 30 seconds before they finish us off. The mimics are using perfect human tactics from our training manuals and technical databases. Every move they make follows proper military procedure exactly as it should be done. But humans do not fight like our manuals say we should. We panic and make mistakes and do crazy things that work even when they should not work. Jake suddenly understood what she meant, and a desperate plan began forming in his mind. These creatures had absorbed human knowledge, but they were still alien.
Minds trying to process human information. They could copy human procedures, but they could not copy the human ability to ignore those procedures when logic failed. Lisa, open emergency channels to every human frequency in this sector, Jake ordered.
As the ship shook from another hit, broadcast this message immediately. UES Valiant to Earth Command. We have discovered alien infiltrators who can copy human forms perfectly. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 77 Alpha. Amy looked up from her work with confusion. Jake, what is Protocol 77 Alpha? I have never heard of any procedure by that designation. That is because it does not exist, Jake replied as he helped Tony reroute power from damaged systems. I just made it up completely. But now every human ship in this area is going to come running to help, and every alien species monitoring our communications is going to panic about some secret human protocol they know nothing about. Katie Barnes understood immediately and grinned, despite the desperate situation they were in. You are counting on everyone reacting to information that is completely false. Our allies will come to help, and our enemies will worry about weapons that do not exist. Exactly, Jake said as Amy worked desperately at her console. Amy, what are you building over there, and please tell me it has a better chance of working than my imaginary protocol. I am creating the most illogical and stupid weapon in the history of warfare, Amy replied, as sweat ran down her face. I am turning our entire reactor into a massive feedback pulse that should theoretically disrupt quantum neural patterns within 50 kilometers of our ship. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Amy, what does theoretically mean in terms of our survival chances? There is about a 60% probability that this device will simply vaporize our ship instead of affecting the enemy. The quantum mechanics involved are completely untested and violate several basic principles of safe engineering. Tony Martinez laughed despite everything that was happening around them. Only humans would build a weapon that has a better chance of killing us than killing our enemies. That is exactly why it might work, Amy said as her fingers flew over the damaged controls. The mimics have access to every human tactical database and every scientific principle we have ever discovered. They know about every logical approach to ship combat, but they do not know about the crazy, desperate things humans do when logic fails completely. The mimic ship was moving in for what would certainly be the final attack when Amy device came online. The energy pulse that erupted from the Valiant was unlike anything that had ever been recorded in galactic military history. It was part electromagnetic burst and part quantum disruption, and part pure human stubbornness, given technological form. The effect on the mimic vessel was immediate and catastrophic. The stolen human neural patterns that the aliens had been using to control their ship began destabilizing and creating feedback loops that their alien consciousness could not process. For creatures that relied on perfect copied knowledge, the sudden introduction of pure human irrationality was devastating. Their ship is dead in space, Tony reported with amazement clear in his voice. Whatever you did, Amy, it worked perfectly. All their systems are offline and they are drifting without power. But Jake was looking at the sensor readings with growing concern instead of relief. Amy, we have much bigger problems now. My fake broadcast worked too well. I am reading 17 different alien fleets converging on our position, and at least 6 human task forces all heading this way at maximum speed. Amy looked up from her console where warning lights were flashing and alarms were beeping constantly, and this weapon burned out our entire power grid completely. We are dead in space just like the mimics. We cannot run, and we cannot fight. Katie Barnes summarized their situation with typical human directness. So, we defeated the aliens who were trying to destroy humanity. But now we are sitting helpless while every military force in this part of the galaxy comes to investigate our completely imaginary secret protocol. Jake nodded and tried not to think about how many different ways this could go wrong. That sounds exactly right for a human plan. We solved one impossible problem and created 6 new ones. Now we get to see what happens when everyone arrives expecting to find super weapons that do not actually exist. The crew of the Valiant had defeated an enemy that should have been unbeatable, but they had done it using methods that no sane military commander would ever approve. Now they had to face the consequences of their success and hope that human creativity could get them out of the mess that human creativity had gotten them into. Space around them was about to become very crowded with very confused and very heavily armed visitors who all wanted answers that the humans did not actually have. Within 6 hours, the new Austin system had become the most crowded and dangerous piece of space in known galactic history. Human task forces had arrived first with Admiral Helen Carter. Third Fleet leading the charge followed quickly by Commodore Ben Rodriguez Patrol Squadron. But the human ships were vastly outnumbered by the alien response to Jake fake emergency broadcast. The Xanthari had sent their entire border fleet convinced that humanity was about to deploy some kind of secret superweapon. The crystal-like Vorthak brought their massive dreadnoughts humming, with barely controlled energy that could destroy planets. Even the mysterious architects who had not been seen in this part of the galaxy for decades had sent a scout force to investigate. Admiral Carter flagship the UES Constitution took position near the drifting Valiant, and her voice came over the communication channel with a mixture of concern and confusion. Jake, what exactly is Protocol 77 Alpha? And why did your emergency broadcast make every alien race in 3 sectors panic and mobilize their fleets? It is a complete fabrication. Admiral Jake replied honestly over the open channel that every ship in the system could hear. I made it up to get attention, and it worked better than I expected. But we discovered something much more important than imaginary protocols. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had been studying the disabled mimic vessel using the Valiant backup sensors, and what she found changed everything they thought they knew about the threat. Admiral, you need to see this data immediately. These mimics are not random raiders or explorers. They are advanced scouts for something much bigger and much worse. The information Amy transmitted made every human commander go silent with shock and fear. The mimic ship contained detailed navigational data showing dozens of similar fleets spread throughout the galaxy, all moving in carefully coordinated patterns toward every inhabited system. This was not an isolated attack, but the beginning of a full-scale galactic invasion designed to replace every intelligent species. The mimics have been systematically studying every major race in the galaxy, Amy continued as her data appeared on screens throughout the gathered fleets. They have complete biological profiles and technological assessments and tactical analyses of everyone. Xanthari military procedures and Vorthak energy manipulation techniques and architect construction methods. They are preparing to replace every species using perfect copies. Ambassador Crick's voice crackled over the communication channel, and his usual arrogance was replaced by barely concealed terror. This is impossible, he declared. Our intelligence networks are the best in the galaxy. We would have detected such a massive threat. They stayed hidden because they were copying us, Jake replied with grim satisfaction. They study each species by absorbing their people and learning everything about them before moving on to the next target. Each mimic fleet is perfectly equipped to impersonate and defeat their assigned species. Commodore Rodriguez raised the question that everyone was thinking. If they are so perfectly prepared to fight us, how did one human ship manage to stop them? Amy smiled with the kind of expression that made alien commanders very nervous. Because they made the fatal mistake of trying to be human. They copied our knowledge and our tactics and our logical procedures, but they could not copy our complete refusal to follow our own rules when survival is at stake. The alien fleets maintained careful distances from each other as centuries of mistrust and territorial disputes kept them from working together effectively. The Zenthari were suspicious of Vorthak intentions. The Vorthak were concerned about architect technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Everyone was worried about what secret weapons the humans might actually possess. This is Admiral Carter to all vessels. Helen broadcast on frequencies that reached every ship in the system. We have discovered evidence of an immediate threat to every species represented here. Logic suggests we should pool our resources and knowledge for mutual defense against this invasion. The response was immediate and completely predictable. Every alien commander refused to share strategic information with potential enemies. The Zenthari would not work with the Vorthak because of ancient border disputes. The Vorthak would not trust the architects because their technology was too advanced. To understand, nobody wanted to give humans access to their most advanced weapons and systems. Typical Katie Barnes muttered, as she watched the tactical display show dozens of heavily armed fleets, all pointing weapons at each other. Faced with extinction, and they are still worried about their political positions and territorial claims. But Jake was studying the sensor readings and fleet compositions with growing excitement rather than despair. Amy, how many of those quantum feedback devices could you build with our current resources and damage systems? With what we have available, maybe 3 or 4. But they would be completely unreliable and might explode instead of working properly. The power requirements alone would need massive energy sources that we simply do not have. Jake pointed at the alien fleets surrounding them. What if we had access to Zenthari quantum processors and Vorthak energy manipulation systems and architect construction materials? Could you build something that would work across multiple star systems? Amy's eyes widened as she began to understand what Jake was suggesting. With that combination of technology, we could probably build devices that would disrupt mimic operations across dozens of star systems simultaneously. But there is absolutely no way they will share that level of advanced technology with us. Jake looked at the display showing 17 different alien fleets, all bristling with weapons and suspicion. Every commander was convinced that humanity was hiding some ultimate weapon that could threaten their species. None of them wanted to cooperate, but all of them were terrified of being left out of whatever humans were planning. Then I guess it is time for the second part of my completely fictional protocol, Jake said, with the kind of smile that made his crew very nervous about what he was planning next. The communication channels lit up as Jake began broadcasting what would become the most audacious bluff in galactic history. He was about to convince the most powerful military forces in known space to voluntarily hand over their most advanced technology based on weapons that existed only in his imagination. Admiral Carter watched Jake prepare for his next impossible gamble and shook her head in amazement. Helen had commanded fleets for 30 years, but she had never seen anything like what this one human captain was about to attempt. Either Jake Morrison was about to save the galaxy or start the biggest war in galactic history. Knowing humans, it would probably be both. Jake Morrison's second completely made-up protocol was even more bold and dangerous than his first fictional emergency broadcast. Speaking on all communication frequencies, so that every ship commander in the system could hear him, he announced that humanity was prepared to share the quantum disruption technology that had defeated the mimics, but only with species willing to provide specific technical assistance in return. The neural feedback pulse requires extremely precise calibration to be effective, Dr. Amy Rodriguez explained to the assembled fleet commanders. Her scientific reputation and obvious expertise gave weight to Jake's improvised plan. We need Zenthari quantum processors for accurate targeting across vast distances. We need Vorthak energy matrices for power distribution on a galactic scale. We need architect materials for containment fields that can prevent mimic infiltration. What followed was the most complex and desperate diplomatic negotiation in recorded galactic history, conducted in the middle of a debris field while everyone worried about incoming mimic invasion fleets. The alien commanders found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They desperately needed the human anti-mimic weapon technology, but providing the requested advanced systems would require unprecedented cooperation between species that had been enemies for centuries. This is complete madness, Ambassador Crix declared over the communication channels. Humans asking for our most advanced quantum processing technology, based on one lucky victory against a single enemy vessel. You expect us to hand over military secrets that we have guarded for thousands of years. Admiral Carter replied with the calm confidence that made her one of the most respected human commanders. Feel free to face the mimic invasion fleets with your conventional weapons, Ambassador. I am sure your perfect tactics and superior technology will serve you well against enemies who know everything you know and can copy every move you make. The breakthrough came when the architect representative spoke through its mechanical communication system. The being of pure energy housed in an artificial framework made an announcement that shocked everyone in the system. The architects will provide the requested construction materials. We have observed mimic expansion in distant galactic sectors. Their threat to all forms of intelligent life is genuine and immediate. Once the mysterious architects committed to cooperation, the other species found themselves trapped by their own pride and political positions. Nobody wanted to be remembered as the race that refused to help defend the galaxy, especially when humanity was offering to share their apparently miraculous weapon technology with everyone. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically with the best scientists and engineers from each species, creating something that had never existed before in galactic history. A truly collaborative defense system that combined the strengths of multiple civilizations. The Zenthari quantum processors could track mimic neural signatures across thousands of light years. The Vorthak energy matrices could power weapons capable of disrupting entire invasion fleets. The architect materials could create containment fields that would prevent any form of infiltration, but the most important component was purely human. The willingness to build weapons that violated every principle of logical military design and safe engineering practices. I do not understand these technical specifications, complained the Zenthari chief engineer as he studied Amy blueprints. The power fluctuations are deliberately randomized rather than optimized. The targeting system includes elements of pure mathematical chance. This weapon design could fail catastrophically at any moment for no logical reason. That is exactly the point, Amy explained patiently to the confused alien engineer. Mimic tactics rely completely on copied knowledge and predictable patterns of behavior. This weapon system is designed to be unpredictable even to us. Random failures and chaotic energy patterns are features, not problems. It is the one thing they cannot plan for or adapt to. The first field test was conducted against a mimic scout fleet that had been approaching the Vorthak border systems. The hybrid human-alien weapon performed exactly as designed, which meant it worked in ways that defied all logical explanation and scientific theory. The quantum disruption pulse somehow created a cascade effect that not only disabled the mimic ships but transmitted the disruption pattern to other mimic fleets through their own quantum communication networks. Impossible, muttered the Vorthak fleet commander, as sensor readings showed mimic invasion forces across 3 entire galactic sectors simultaneously going dark and drifting powerless. The energy patterns should have dissipated after 50 kilometers according to every known law of physics. Should have, Jake agreed with a grin that was becoming famous throughout the gathered fleets. But humans have never been very good at following what things should do according to the rules. Within weeks, the improvised alliance had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly cooperative defense network where each species contributed their greatest strengths while learning to work around traditional weaknesses and ancient prejudices. The mimics, for all their copied knowledge and superior technology, found themselves facing something they could not understand or replicate. The chaotic creativity that emerged when different species stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to survive together was beyond their ability to analyze or copy. Status report Admiral Carter requested as the largest combined fleet in galactic history prepared to jump to hyperspace and hunt down the remaining mimic concentrations. All human vessels ready for operation. Jake reported from the rebuilt bridge of the Valiant. Zenthari battle groups standing by for quantum pulse coordination. Came the response from Admiral Crix, whose tone no longer carried any trace of its old arrogance. Vorthak energy ships prepared for power distribution across the fleet. Added the crystalline commander whose species had learned to work with others for the first time in millennia. Architect construction vessels ready for battlefield deployment. Concluded the mechanical voice of their enigmatic allies who had emerged from isolation to help save the galaxy. As the largest cooperative military force in recorded history, jumped into hyperspace. Dr. Rodriguez turned to Jake with a question that had been bothering her since this whole impossible situation began. "We never actually had a Protocol 77 Alpha, did we, Captain?" Jake smiled as he watched the combined fleet disappear into hyperspace, carrying hope for every intelligent species in the galaxy. "We do now, Amy. Sometimes the best way to find a solution to an impossible problem is to convince everyone that you already have the answer and then let them help you build it." Looking out at the mixed fleet of human ships and alien vessels working together with shared determination, Katie Barnes made an observation that would be remembered in history books for thousands of years. Leave it to humans to save the galaxy, with weapons that should not work, powered by an alliance that should not exist, while fighting an enemy that should not be possible to defeat. "That is humanity for you," Jake replied as he prepared for the next phase of their impossible mission. "We always find a way to do things that cannot be done, especially when there is no logical way to do them." The mimic threat was far from completely eliminated, but for the first time in galactic history, every major intelligent species was working together toward a common goal of survival. It had taken an impossible enemy and several completely fictional protocols to achieve what thousands of years of diplomacy and politics had failed to accomplish. Humanity had once again proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon against a superior enemy is not better technology or perfect tactics, but the stubborn refusal to accept that something cannot be done, combined with just enough chaos and unpredictability to make victory possible against all odds. The galaxy would never be the same again, and perhaps that was exactly what every species needed to survive and thrive together.